was kind of your specific role? Did you just go in there and just, were you like, I'm just gonna come in and just try to help where I can, or did you like, you know, did you just get there, get acclimated, and take on a specific role, something you maybe had a specialty in or anything?
Well, I was just there to support them, but also to document, because I took over 300 photographs, and I just recently looked at some notebooks of notes that I took. And so I took a lot of quotes. I have a lot of quotes, I guess that's what I'm trying to say. I wrote down what people were saying during the hearings and at other times. So I was paying a lot of attention because I was trying to do a story for Ms. Magazine. But at some point I had to realize that, you know, 300 photographs was enough. So I was just documenting because it seemed so important.
Did you have trouble with people when you were taking pictures, maybe law enforcement or somebody telling you not to take pictures or any problems like that?
No, not at all. But I did have a specific role when I went back with a group of people that went back to D.C. like the second or third week. I was one of the organizers with outreach, doing outreach to the media. We were very well organized back there too, and we'd staged several demonstrations in front of the White House and in front of a rally in Lafayette Park across the street from the White House. And we met with several Senators Cranston and Williams, and we met with I think it was Stu Eisenstadt in the White House. So we all played an important role in all of that. I mean, everybody was needed. If we could have been cloned, it would have been better.
The strength of more, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe now you're getting towards, you know, completion, and you know, it sounds like we're gonna reach that goal we want to reach. When did you first start to feel that, hey, I think this may be really happening. We may get what we want in the end. What was that? When did you get that feeling?
I don't know. It came slowly. It wasn't, you know, like. It wasn't lightning striking. But I also want to acknowledge, I'm sure you must be acknowledging the Teamsters, the role that they played in helping us.
Tell us, describe what you remember and who they were and how they helped.
Well, they were there all along. They just adopted us as a cause. They couldn't do enough, and they flew with us back to D.C. They rented a U-Haul van, and they helped us, that had a lift, and they helped us leave the airport, get to the place, I think it was the Place Presbyterian Church where we stayed, slept in the nave every night, and they built these incredible, they laid wood over the stairs going up to the church, so the ramp was like that steep. And I have photographs of that too. And they were just with us, accommodating us in every way that they could all the time. And I have some pictures. I went to, I was on a committee for the United States Access Board several years ago, probably more than several, and flew into DC, and going from the airport, I saw the Lincoln Memorial and the Washington Memorial. The introduction that you get to DC coming in from the airport, and it was fabulous. But even though that was the first time I saw it, because the first time I went there for the 504 demonstration, we were in a dark van with no windows. So they would drive us all over town, and they would open up the back, and they would see, where we were, and then they shut us back in and drive us around. And so we only got these little vignettes, little pop-ups of what DC looked like. So because there was no accessible transportation at the time, nothing. Our transportation was a U-Haul.
What was your biggest fear during this whole era of the Cold War coming out? Was it just that you just won't be successful? Simple as that? Or what were some of your fears?
I was never afraid that we wouldn't be successful, and not whether or not the regulations were signed as we wanted them to be signed, the version we wanted, because we'd already won. we had already won. Coming together like that, finding ourselves, finding our voice, finding our value, we'd already won. And whether our civil rights were acknowledged then or later, the battle was already over because it had happened inside of all of us.
Did you agree with everything about the 504s? Any part of it you would like to change during the time, or?
Well, the two big battles, and I remember bringing this up during the meeting at the White House. There had been a hearing in San Francisco conducted by Congressman Miller and a senator, or they're both congressmen, I can't remember, Miller and Burton. And they had brought in a representative from HEW, and Eisenberg, I believe is his name. And he said, I remember very clearly him talking about it. Education is the basic issue, and access to schools. And he used the word separate but equal, and describing what they called consortia, which was basically another word for segregated. School districts would be allowed to choose one school, consort to choose one school that would be for students with disabilities, and of course that's segregation. So we were, I think it was with Senator Cranston, and we had really hit him with all the emotional issues around that, and then I brought up the fact that we actually heard him say separate but equal, and I knew the word consortia, and the senator turned to me and said, oh, well, tell me some more about that. And I was so naive, and I knew I couldn't articulate it, what the real legal issues were, and I turned to Daniel HolLynn, who was with the Children's Defense Fund, and he took it up. Thank goodness. He picked up the sword and ran with it, and explained all the legal ins and outs of creating basically segregation for people with disability in schools. So that was a really important issue, and we won. I think we won that day with Senator Cranston hearing that issue. And another important issue was the issue of recognizing people with histories of substance abuse as having a disability, and that was a major victory.
Can you tell us more about the hardships you witnessed during the 504 dissidents?
Oh, it was difficult. Yeah, especially when going back to Washington, D.C. Once again, the unsung heroes that helped me get out of my wheelchair and onto the floor to sleep at night. Or helped pick me up off the floor and put me in my wheelchair the next day. It was difficult. It was difficult, but more because the emotional energy we were putting into it. There were at least 3 nights in that week in D.C. where we were up for. Well, there were 3 times I know that we were up for 36 hours. Yeah, and this is the beauty of it, and I'm afraid we're losing it today, but our leaders, Judy and Kitty and Pat Wright and the others, they insisted that everybody participate equally. And so that means taking the time to listen to somebody with a speech impediment, no matter how long it takes. They spoke until they were finished. If a sign language interpreter was not available, we didn't meet. They insisted, and they built unity, because one of the strategies against us at that time was to separate us, of course, into visual and mobility and hearing impaired and mental and emotional and all the other. And they insisted, and that was what they created. That was a real legacy of those leaders in 37 years ago, is they created they institutionalized that we are all working together to support each other regardless of the type of disability we have.
Can you tell us about personally what you were learning, since you hadn't been surrounded by disability community before, what it was like to be around people with new different disabilities?
Oh, yeah. For myself, that was a huge breakthrough to in fact, I learned some sign language and learned about visual impairments, developed the patience to take the time to listen, which is, I wish everybody could have that gift. So it was a huge change for me also to be around other types of disabilities.
Like, do you bring like any of your artwork?
Oh,
like those
I'm on the
festivals
Art at the Source tour this year. Yeah.
You're so people come to your house?
Uh-huh.
Oh, neat.
Yeah, it's the first 2 weekends in June. You're welcome to come.
That's lovely.
My wife used to be heavily involved in that because she worked at the exchange bank. She
Yeah.
was heavily involved in that. So she used to drag me into helping her.
You know, it's so much fun. I've done it for years myself as a participant. I mean, not as a host, but because you get to drive around on these little country roads that you don't even know about, and you go to places you'd never be invited to. And it's beautiful to drive around, to go to all these different studios.
Yeah, my mother-in-law does something similar. They do a native plant tour in San Francisco, and she's been on that tour, so I've hosted at her house for the people coming in. It's fun. You just meet people, have great conversations,
Yeah.
All right.
How are we doing, Tom?
How are we doing on time? This one isn't showing me.
I don't think it has the time.
This display.
Yeah, it's fully charged.
There we go.
I charge it overnight.
Well, this says 7:48.
Forget.
Do you want me to get it?
No chance. Don't take a chance on this. All right.
Okay.
All right. Can you describe the scene? Where and when were you at when you found the 504 was signed?
I don't remember.
You don't remember?
I don't remember. Yeah, it was. I think when we came back from D.C., there was a feeling that we had succeeded.
Like it was just a matter of dotting the I's and crossing the T's?
Yeah, that was more or less the feeling that I had. Or it could be, truthfully, that I just had to get back to my family and focus on them. So,
Okay, maybe you'll remember the specifics. Remember, kind of like after it was signed, kind of like maybe like the next few weeks or month after, just kind of, was it just, you just overjoyed and just kind of walking on cloud 9 for a month? What had happened?
I don't, what actually happened is I went to work for the Department of Rehabilitation shortly after that, and it's one thing to have the paper, it's another thing to have it implemented, and the struggles to implement 504, to implement the ADA, to implement California's civil code that was passed 47 years ago, 1968. We're still struggling to have our civil rights implemented. And so, yes, things are better, and yes, there's joy every time we have a victory, and especially these days, we try to celebrate every victory we get. But getting implementation, and there just are not enough people with disabilities who are going to the courts to get implementation. I've put on hundreds of seminars. I've written books that were sent out to all the cities and counties twice on what the access standards are and how to implement them. I've made phone calls. I've made presentations. I've done everything I can do, and yet today, to get some compliance is still the only way to do it is to go to court. The only real way to get it done is to go to court.
What kind of specific compliance do you want to see today?
What?
What kind of specific compliance and things do you want to see change today that, what are some of the issues still facing?
Oh, architectural barriers. I mean, that's where I focus, is architectural barriers. I'm sure there's still barriers in education. We're still vastly underemployed. and there's still a lack of accommodation. I had a great deal of trouble getting accommodation for my disability when I worked for the Department of Rehabilitation, which should be on the forefront of it. So it's like you said, well, I shouldn't say that, should I?
Okay.
Get it out.
The change takes a long time, a long time, and sometimes you realize it has to be person by person, you know, to have them get it, you know.
Do you see people from younger generations, you know, eventually, you know, we all pass on, and, you know, and you'll have left a huge impact and a legacy as far as your activism in this, but do you see the younger generation still getting involved and wanting to keep pushing things forward?
Not so much, and you know, well, that was the 70s, and that we were at the tail end of many civil rights movements for minorities, for women, and of course they set the pattern for us, and it's a different climate today. I'm hoping that the younger generation will demand their place.
And go back to kind of era the Black Panthers were involved in this. Can you speak about their involvement and what was it like being around such a, you know, now, you know, historical group that we still talk about today?
Oh, it was exciting. I mean, we had support from so many disparate groups. You know, Safeway provided food. The Black Panthers brought in these huge tubs of almonds, or, you know, food, or huge turkeys and hams, and they fed us like, you know, royalty. And so we had that interaction with them. One of our members, one of the person with a disability, Ron Washington, I think is a member of the Black Panthers. But they're just people. They were people that were supporting us, you know.
Another good Samaritan wanted to help out the cause.
Yeah.
Can you speak to the racial diversity of the protest? I mean, it was really diverse, especially the group that went to Washington that you participated in. Can you speak about, you know, what that was like?
The diversity.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. San Francisco, I took the diversity for granted. Of course it's diverse. That's one of the reasons I moved out here from Texas. I'm a born liberal, I suppose, or I don't have a lot of tolerance for not accepting people as people. And so I was drawn to the West Coast like a magnet. You know, it drew me because, and to Sonoma County where I live today, it's very, very liberal. And just to me, whatever liberal means to me it means logical.
Anything else you would have done differently during the bilingual protest, personally?
Well, I don't know. I mean, think about that one. I'm sure, of course, I would have taken more notes and more photographs.
Let's just say, I mean, it sounds like you guys were steadfast and gonna accomplish one way or another, but what if it hadn't been signed and just, you know, eventually you guys had gave up? Well, how would life be today? It would be different.
Oh, it would be.
For a disabled person.
It would be far different. And I don't even know if I'd be alive. Like I said, we won because of what we did. Whether we succeeded or not, we won. And we would have succeeded eventually, because that demonstration lit a fire that didn't go out and won't go out. Even what they're trying to do to women today, it's a ridiculous exercise. Women are not going to accept a second-class status. It's not going to happen, no matter what the politicians try to do.
I know you're still involved today with activism, you know, trying to help out people. Can you speak more about specific what you're doing right now?
Well, right now, I've just put in hours and hours on doing some code analysis. The Division of the State Architect and the Department of Housing and Community Development have been updating their accessibility codes. And one governs public accommodations, one governs housing. And they had some really, what we thought were some really bad proposed code changes. So we've been working with them as they went through their hearing process. And we're into the final step now where we're putting together our response to their code changes that will go before the California Building Standards Commission. So we put in, I don't know, hours and tons of hours this last year working with both departments. And what I always do is I send out to mailing list. I have a couple hundred people on the mailing list, and they have mailing list. And it's the way we're organized in the state to get the word out about what's happening and to the codes that affect our built environment. And so people have been pretty good about, we've done the analysis, we lay it out for them, because it takes a certain expertise. That's the problem. You see, just because you have a disability doesn't mean you know anything about building code, but building code totally impacts your life. And so there were a few of us who have the expertise, because I worked with building code for years. Richard Scaff, who does amazing work, he worked in the mayor's office. He and I do work on these codes and then get the word out, analyze them, put something together in a package that people can just copy and paste and send on. And so we can be, so that these departments and the commission can hear from more than just a couple of people with disabilities. What we're doing is competing with highly, highly paid lobbyists who are there every day in Sacramento, pounding away, trying to diminish access. And, you know, they just want to represent their clients who say that access costs too much money, which is nonsense if you do it right. But, so we've just taught a couple of us volunteers who work very hard to represent people with disabilities against all these paid professionals. And so that's what's going on right now, and we haven't come up with a way to get more people in the disability community educated about how to do this when we're not here to do it anymore. That's the nut we have to crack right now, and I think I've got an idea how to do that.
Back to the Federal Ford, did you you have a sense that it was really catching fire with the general public, this movement, that people were becoming interested, and kind of as a groundswell building? Did you see any sense of that just, you know, the regular average Joe walking down the street to his job in San Francisco was starting to care about the protest?
Well, they certainly knew about it. We had great coverage, particularly by, and I can't remember the name of the reporter right now in the station, but I have a photo.
Evan White.
Evan what?
Evan White, KPIX.
Evan White. Yes, Evan White. Evan White did great coverage, and so I know that people were aware of it, and it had to be working on their brain too. I mean, here are all these uppity cripples taking over a government building. What's going on, you know? So I'm sure it impacted a lot of people, and of course, like I said, we had many, many diverse groups helping us.
What about people close to you? Did you know?
What?
People close to you who had nothing else to do with disability. Did you see a change in them, and did they look at you differently once you participated in this?
People close to me.
What about your daughters, for example, or your children?
Oh, my children, you know, they were just bewildered, and it was something that was taking mother away, and, you know, I don't think people close to me really knew much about what was going on or the impact of it. It was a few moments and a few headlines, and that was it. And but see, that's what I mean when I say we won, because it was what happened for each of us. And besides getting the changes that we needed in law, it was there. It was a solid foundation from which to grow. That's what it was. And I know when I moved here to Sonoma County 10 years ago, my friends, everybody's familiar with the ADA, everybody knows the concept, everybody supports it. So that was the beginning.
What are some of the social lessons you learned from being stuck in the building for a month?
As I said, I went back and forth, so I wasn't stuck in the building. Yeah. But I did see people going out of their minds with boredom, you know, and like I said, the struggle every day to stay there one more day. And so they instituted a lot of classes. They created all sorts of things to keep them from going stir crazy.
Things they did to keep themselves, you know, they just bring a deck of cards or just play games and just something to pass the time while they just.
They did everything, you know, and they worked. They worked on the cause. They worked on the media. They worked on getting the word out. They worked on press releases. They worked on organizing. I mean, people had jobs to do every day, but one of the problems was to keep from going stir crazy. Yeah. You know.
What about the parties? Drugs, sex.
Parties, drugs, and
sex. Give us the after hours stories.
I don't have any of those. I was home with my family by then. If you find out some, I'd sure like to know.
I forget some good ones.
Yeah, do you see any like people relationships start? You know, you work those closely, feel for a while.
Yeah,
you know,
I think there were some romances that started. Yeah.
Anybody get married from those days that are still together today, or?
Connie and Ray, I think got married after that. What's Ray's last name? Uzetta. Yeah, I think.
Probably saw a few breakups maybe too along the way.
Yeah.
How did the 504 shape who you are today?
Wow. Well, it turned me into a bit. I was a bit of an activist anyway, but it definitely turned me into more of an activist after that, and focused on disability, civil rights, and then my focus became on buildings. Architectural accessibility is what it is. You can't do everything, so that was what I chose to do.
And I know you were kind of in and out of it soon, you know, maybe to eat, but, you know, food was cut off during the sit-in. What'd you witness as a reaction from that? Was it just pure anger?
When what was cut off?
Food was cut off?
I don't remember the food being cut off.
It wasn't cut off. There was a hunger strike at one point, but that was a choice that people made, and it was part of them. Yeah.
That's a question for photos.
Some of the other places, that's probably why it was one of the other students. Food was cut off in some of the other sites where 504 protests were happening.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, other cities. Like I said, this was San Francisco. You know, it's just, it was. I mean, I think that you know I'm sure you're making it clear that there were other demonstrations staged in other cities throughout the country, and I think the other longest one after ours, after the San Francisco demonstration, lasted 24 hours. So, a different place.
What's your most vivid memory from it? There's something like, you know, when you're hanging around your house, that one just image that just captures in your mind, you know, one scene that just always sticks with you. What would be that one thing?
Well, I have several. I don't have one.
Well, maybe just a few.
Yeah, I'll. In fact, I have a photo. The amused look on Mr. Maldonado's face when all these people with disabilities and in wheelchairs, you know, streamed into his office and filled it up and wouldn't go away. And we were lucky. They were gentle people.
Were you happy with the media's portrayal of the protest during the time?
With the media's portrayal?
The media coverage, you feel it was fair and accurate?
I think it was pretty good, yeah.
Maybe examples of stuff that you didn't like?
Well, you never feel like the media totally gets it right. I've got some articles that I'd have to look at them again.
Can I jump in with one? When I see your photographs, one of the things that I love is, you know, you have these images that capture the hardship, and Craig has asked you a lot about the hardship, but there's also photos that just capture so much joy. I mean, a father with his child visiting and the child sitting on the lap, or, you know, the pride in people's faces. Can you talk about some of the happy moments that you remember, and who was happy, what made them happy? You know?
Happy moments. I think there was an underlying joy in the whole event. I mean, there were struggles, there were hardships, there were hurt feelings and arguments and angst at the whole situation, but it was joyful to come into your own with other people having that same experience, supporting each other. There was so much mutual support. There was so much community. I mean, community is a source of joy.
You hope your participation in the protest has affected the disabled community. I can repeat that, I'm stuttering. How do you hope your participation in the protest has affected the disabled community, disability community? It's kind of typo, weird.
How do I know if...
How do you hope your participation, do you hope your participation has influenced other people to, you know, get involved, take action?
You know, I hope that my participation encourages other people to do something. I hope your exhibit does that, to say, look, it's doable. We can do this. You know, you can do it. You can make change for the better. And that's a universal message.
That kind of a message you want to send to people about whatever, you know, challenge they face in their lives, just for anybody, whatever particular challenge they have. It's just kind of like, you want to serve, you know, that to serve as kind of an inspirational thing, saying, hey, you know, yeah, you know, look at what we did. You know,
Yeah.
we had a really hard thing to do. There was a lot of challenges, but hey, we stuck with it, and in the
Yeah.
end, we accomplished a lot.
Yeah. I think that's the message to get out, is that together you can do it. It's hard for one person to do it, but Americans are wonderful at organizing. I think maybe it starts in kindergarten, I don't know, but we can organize. We can organize in 5 minutes, and that's the key. And overcoming our personality differences, our need to control. We do it, and we do organize, and we become followers, or we become leaders, whatever works at the moment. And that's what the message is. The message is building community and supporting each other. And you can do anything.
Just kind of a final question I want to ask is, what do you want people to know about you?
I don't know. What do I want them to know about me? Well, what I want people to know about me is that I happen to be at the right place at the right time to have an impact, I think. But I'm not special. Anybody can do what those of us in the 504 demonstration did. Anybody can do it. It doesn't take any particular intelligence or any kind of talents. It just takes a commitment to righting a wrong and to working with your community to accomplish that.
Anything else you thought I left out, or
Yeah.
ask about?
A few more, I think. And why don't we swap just seats real quick so that you can look at me while I'm not sure how much I have.
Do you want to move into the
covered a
shade?
lot. Yeah. Am I out of this?
No, we're gonna have to move in further. I could move
I got
back.
my, no, you're
No, it's
fine.
okay.
It's I only have a few more questions maybe.
Okay.
Were there hierarchies within of disabilities, certain disability groups that got heard, got their issues, at the front of the fight more than others, or racial hierarchies, gender hierarchies, any tensions within the protest and the organizers?
Were there any, as far as hierarchies within the community, the 504 community, there was the leadership, but the leadership was so respectful and so determined that we would all treat each other with respect, that we would learn about each other's disabilities, and that we would always work with one voice. That there was that the leadership hierarchy was a necessity, not that everybody would support it because it worked. As far as other hierarchies among race, I think Ron Washington had more status because he was associated with the Black Panthers. I don't know. I didn't see a racial hierarchy. I think at that point, as far as women are concerned, we were still struggling, as we are again today, with issues of equality and equal opportunity. So that, but it was heavily dominated by women anyway. So I didn't see a lot of hierarchy or any negative hierarchy when I was participating.
One of the quotes I read that most struck me. I do have some shade for written after you did it. Yeah, take some shade there. One of the quotes that most struck me is, I won't remember it word for word, but when George Moscone visited the protest, he said, anybody who doubts the creativity and perseverance of the handicapped, was the word he used at the time, should come down here and see this. Can you tell me any stories that you remember, or give any examples of people just being incredibly resourceful? You're in this building and people hadn't planned to stay over, or plenty of people there hadn't planned to stay over. How did you make it work? How did people make it work with showering, bathrooms, all of it? Any examples and stories from how you saw people coping?
Well, as I said, Americans are great at organizing. I swear you would have thought they'd pre-planned it, and I understand they didn't that much. But with a very short amount of time, they had committees organized to take care of food, showering, toileting, sleeping, entertainment, education, organizing, protesting, media work. I mean, you have a need, you had a committee, and very effective committees, and they just got the job done. And it wasn't in the days of, I wonder what it would be like if there was such a protest today with cell phones and all the social media that's so available, because we did everything, with landlines. We didn't call them landlines at that time, we called them the telephone. And we did everything on a typewriter and with a Xerox machine. And but it was quite effective. The work was and because of the mutual respect and that they were there to make sure that everybody's needs were met, people were safe and their needs were taken care of. If somebody needed medication, they had a team on it. They were going to get that medication. So in a way, it was a safe place to be because you were so totally supported.
A lot of people who were part of the protest have passed away already. Can you speak to, what that means that they passed before? Do you think that people knew their stories, knew about their contributions when they went, or do you just want to say anything about, what it means that there's certain people who aren't around,
right,
as we prepare to sort of celebrate this history?
Well, unfortunately, you get used to death in the disability community. They do happen sooner than later. But as far as regrets, that some of the people didn't live to see what we've accomplished so far today, there are no regrets, because like I said, what we did was a victory, huge victory, life-changing victory, not just for each of us individually, but for, you know, the rest of civilization. If, you know, what's happening to women's rights today, I don't know, but, you know, you think you've accomplished something, and then you find yourself having to struggle to maintain it. And I'm sure we'll go through that, or are going through it in many ways, like I just described, you know, what we're having to hang on to at the state level with our building code, and fighting to keep access as we've known it, and to improve the standards, which are always a compromise to start with. So yes, those who've already left us a huge legacy, and I'm sure that victory of being there and accomplishing what we accomplished is something that can never be taken away from them.
Do you think that the Americans with Disabilities Act would have happened when it did without 504?
I doubt it. I really, especially if we hadn't succeeded in cleaning up the regulations, getting rid of the segregation and the discrimination against substance users. The ADA wouldn't have happened. This was a template for the ADA.
And I think this is my last question. I enjoyed earlier you told us a bit about that first moment, hearing the speeches and just going inside and not really knowing what was happening.
Mm-hmm.
I would love if you could just spend a little bit more time trying everything possible to put yourself back in that moment and describe what it was like, what you were seeing, what you were thinking,
yeah.
What you heard maybe in some of the speeches that spoke to you.
Let's see, what I remember, that first rally in San Francisco, and I remember people saying things I had never thought of before, much less heard anybody say out loud, making demands that society accommodate us, recognize our existence. And so that was, of course that was the message over and over and over and over again, and that and, you know, we won't take it anymore, and the adamacy of the speakers. It was, there was no apology for being, and which is what I was so used to. So, and it couldn't happen often enough, or too many times, that I would hear that message that day. And of course I heard it in every different possible way, and that's why it was just, when I remember, it's just flashes of voices and faces and these words over and over, demanding equal opportunity. It was mind-bending.
I do have one more. You know, 504, I don't think has been covered as widely as it should have been for how important it is. But there have been some efforts to, you know, capture the history, to celebrate, you know, what was achieved. What do you think gets missed? What do you want people to know about 504 that maybe hasn't been covered as much, or, you know, just for our exhibit? What do you want to make sure that people, when they think about 504, they understand this?
Oh, my goodness, see, what do I want? Well, I see this, I'm just thinking out loud.
Yeah.
The scope of 504 was limited. It would only apply to recipients of federal dollars, $10,000 or more federal dollars. So there was a limited scope. And of course there was poor implementation at the beginning. And implementation again had to be achieved through the courts, mostly through the courts. And through the courts, we also, because of the prejudices of the judges, some of the pieces of it got whittled away. Same things happened to the ADA. But what I would want people to know about Section 504 that's not known today, I think, is the connection with the ADA. How important 504 was for the ADA, because we had, 23 years between the signing of the 504 regulations and the signing of the ADA in 1990. We had all those years to practice, to know how the ADA needed to be worded so it couldn't be damaged to the way 504 was, how it needed to be worded so that it could be implemented better with more vigor. I think those were all important. It was an important period of time to incubate the ADA.